Morning and welcome to another Coffee, Buses and Politics. I'm joined by Alex and Martin. David is mysteriously not here this morning. He told us last night he's not coming. We don't know why. So it's just us three this morning. And we're going to kick off talking. Well, let's start by talking about. Are you trapped in Whittlesea, Martin? That's what I've
I
heard.
am trapped in Whittlesea today. We're not quite trapped, but we're not far off it. Yeah. Thankfully, because I work from home, it doesn't affect me as much as it does others. But yeah, Whittlesea's got a problem at the moment. We've got the Wash Road closed, unless it's magically reopened at night, last night, which is possible. But we've got the Wash Road closed, and then your favourite bridge in Whittlesea is got traffic controls on it because they're not sure how structurally sound it is. It's basically apparently crumbling at the bottom.
Which is interesting because I've only been a county councillor for 3.5 years, and one of the loveliest things I did was opening that bridge. It's a county council project, going over a railway line in Whittlesea, isn't it? Basically replacing or diverting traffic. There used to be a level crossing. There probably still is a level crossing, which caused loads of delays. And a chap called, has it gone? Oh, that makes it even worse than if it's not working. And so a chap called Ralph Butcher, who was a councillor, Conservative councillor, who was on with you, wasn't he, Martin? And campaigned for that for, I don't know, 20, 30 years to get that built and actually managed to get it built. I opened it and now it's broken again. Brilliant.
Me and Ralph campaigned really hard for it, and the decision to open, to build the bridge was made, it would have been late 2012, or somewhere around about then. And no, yeah, about late 2012, and I was on cabinet when it was when the decision was made. It is a positive for Whittlesea, a real positive. But I'm a bit concerned because there were always issues around the cost of the bridge, the route, and they actually, when the cost of the bridge started to go absolutely through the roof, they reconsulted residents on it, and they reconsulted in a strange way, and I've seen it before, but they basically pushed residents in the direction to say, let's keep having what we've got, and they really did push and guide them in that direction. So residents weren't really given a choice as to what they would prefer. So they went with what they were working on and planning, and we are where we are. Somebody's got to find a solution to it because we can't just keep having two-way traffic on that on the bridge. We just can't, because at the moment it's absolute chaos. I mean, literally traffic backing up from the bridge well into Whittlesea at peak times.
And what about the Wash Road? Does the Wash Road always flood when it's really high river or not?
Yeah, it's in a flood zone. It's what it's there for. So we basically all the water along the River Nene gets pushed down from Northampton and everywhere else, and to a certain extent it's a little bit worse than it used to be because they put loads of flood defences in and around Northampton, and I don't begrudge Northampton that, but you know, what it does is push water into flood zones, and you know that is there as a you know, it's there to take water when there's a lot of it.
What I do begrudge Northampton for is not calling the River Nene, but calling the River Nen, which is just weird, isn't it? I just don't get that.
No, I agree. They've got to change it. We should start a petition, present it to West Northants Council.
Yes. So flooding's been a problem. Well, not across the whole of the area, but certainly along the river. So along the River Nen, as it's called in some places, and along the River Great Ouse as well, where I am.
Annoying me.
Yes, we've got, so there's the county council early this year just briefly discussed a crossing in St Neots and between St Neots and Little Paxton, which floods. Well, every time the river floods, it floods and basically severs those two communities. But what happened in January is the flooding was so severe that it washed away half the surface and reduced the big part of the bridge down to its cobblestones. And County Council did a fantastic job, you know, wait for it to dry out. And inside 2 weeks, it was resurfaced and reopened again. And now it's flooded again. And the whole new piece of tarmac has kind of stripped off again and gone down the river. And so we talked at County Council about whether we wanted to spend the money in doing a feasibility study or not. that was pushed off the highways and transportation. And I've looked on it and I've tried to send some messages, but not on the forward agenda plan. But that's one of those things. And you've got the Erith Causeway always closes, and it's difficult, isn't it? Because we live by a river, and lots of us live in the fens as well, which are even more prone to flooding. And these roads flood all the time. And does a county council have the money to fix them? I don't know. The days of building things like the bridge in Whittlesea seem behind us, don't they? Getting that sort of money, Martin. Is that a possibility for the future? Do you think, or not?
Well, I hope that's where the combined authority is, because one of the things, there's a report yesterday, a national report that says, I can't remember the exact figure. I think it's something like we need 1.8 trillion to spend on infrastructure. That's basically the value of the infrastructure deficit in the UK. And there's talk already of the government slashing infrastructure projects. So we can't afford to do that. It's the thing that used to set Britain apart in the past is, we used to always invest in infrastructure and make infrastructure happen. And we're just not doing it anymore. And our economy suffers as a result of it. So I hope not. We've got to find a way of funding road projects. We've got to prioritize them, make sure the ones with the economic advantage are there. But we can't afford not to.
No. How is the flooding situation in your neck of the woods, Alex?
I mean, it's been quite bad, I think, every year, but particularly around Brampton and St. Ives wider area as well. But those are issues that are, really widely known. I think what's interesting, from the last few days, is how much more information I've actually seen, especially from the district council, Stephen. When I, just open my social media, I see kind of a daily post from the district council, because I think it is important to communicate this information better to our residents, whether it's about how to report, just the standard procedure, how to report flooding, but also how to take precautions or the measures that you can do against it as well. And I know, Stephen, you've been involved a lot in those those topics and discussions in part of your county council role. But there's something I'm quite interested to discuss. Okay, because a lot of residents are saying, well, we feel we don't get enough information, whereas others say, well, you just have to check the county council website to see all this information, which is indeed there. So the question is what can we do as a county council or as district council to inform residents better? I think one of the things that's not perhaps widely known is that there is this multi-agency response to flooding. So of course the county council and district council are involved, but part of this wider Cambridgeshire and Peterborough local resilience group that involves so many other agencies and organizations. And it's not only the council as an entity that is responsible for, whether it's information or stopping it, although different councils have different responsibilities. For example, as a county, obviously, because we have highways, those discussions around infrastructure and around fixing issues to do with roads and highways as a result of flooding obviously fall under our responsibility. But I was just following some of the debate over the last few days on local groups and other comments. I thought it was quite interesting that not, and I didn't know this before I was on county council either, that no one knows how kind of complex in terms of the the local residence forum involves more than one council, and there are different responsibilities depending on who you involve. And you can criticize whether someone is doing the job right or not, but there are many issues, especially regarding the Environment Agency and how much funding we have to have there, or how efficient that is, and other stakeholders and how they're also funded to support this work.
Yeah. So as of this week, I am now at HTC. I am the executive cabinet cabinet member in charge of emergency planning as well, because it's not the first time we've been through this, and I think it's a difficult problem to solve. Yeah, because people say that we don't communicate enough. Yeah, but there's also the problem in all of this is over communication tends to be a bit of an issue. And so what you tend to see from the Environment Agency is that this has been quite a long flooding cycle. And at the beginning of the flooding cycle, people and regularly every time the river gets high, people get peppered with flood warnings. Yeah. And then nothing happens, and then they get immune to them. And so when it really does flood, then they don't act. So getting that balance of communication right is always really quite difficult. I think District Council has done a good job. I mean, I think I first got involved in all this in Christmas 2020 or the summer of 2020, Sydney it's flooded twice, and back then the comms were really bad between the district council, which is the authority, which is the frontline authority in communicating with residents. I think county council is more of a strategic role in all this, and we learned from that, and we've done a lot of better jobs. So at HDC now we have like an officer who's on, like a command officer, a gold command officer who's on call all weekend and hand it over, and they're the interface between people like the Environment Agency and the police and the fire brigade. And so that's kind of improved quite a lot. But I think people don't understand how much work goes on behind the scenes at county council, and at the Environment Agency as well. I'm not massively fond. Well, I think the Environment Agency is great, but I think they're just chronically underfunded. So I'm also on the Regional Flood and Coastal Committee for the River Great Ouse, which is the big body in which we talk a few times a year between councils and the EA. And what you see is the EA is funded on the number of houses or properties it can prevent being flooded. And that doesn't mean, water in your road or water in your garden. It means water in your house. And so, like, if you look at some of the problems in eyes that people are locked into their houses because their road is flooding and their gardens are flooded, that doesn't really count as flooding to people like the EA. They only really, and maybe it shouldn't be as well because they've got limited resources. What's really awful is if your garden gets flooded, you recover from it. Once your house gets flooded, other than your house burning down, it's the worst possible thing that can happen. And so there's limited money available, and the EA have to spend their resources in trying to protect the maximum amount of properties as the flood infrastructure is failing all around them as well, and they can't afford to replace bits of it. So it's all very controversial.
That over communication issue is the thing in Whittlesey. There is one of the things they've improved is they put signage up in Whittlesey now, so they do tell you when the water road is closed. They've got electronic signage. It used to be all manual, and it used to always be got wrong. They used to tell you the wrong road was closed was one of the things. But so that all that has improved. But there is a tendency there is a feeling in Whittlesey that they're a little bit over keen to close the road because of a danger of flooding. So what happens is they say, there's a flood risk, we're going to close the road, and then it doesn't flood. And that obviously causes controversy. You can imagine what happens on social media with that. And that's, that's one of those things. And it's a difficult one because actually that road, whether it floods and whether water washes over it or not in some occasions, just depends on whether the wind changes or not, literally. And so, when people say that, it's not said from a position. It's a position. It's frustration. I get that, and I understand it. But also, when the water ebbs away and the road opens, every time they have to go through, clean the road, get rid of debris and all that stuff. And there's a bit of frustration because they have to wait for that to happen as well. And I sort of understand that because I do think, and I used to have this argument with county when I was a councillor, that they could gear up to get that done a little bit earlier than they do. So I sort of get that. But the other thing, obviously, is a lot of people think that if there's 2 inches of water on the road, then they should be allowed to drive through it. And I'm not a fan of that because we've had people have to be rescued, and the one person that gets that wrong and gets washed down the road, literally along with the water or whatever. I'm just not a fan of that idea, but some people do think that. Thankfully, they can't get through now.
Well, it's a bit like when we had Stuart on the other week talking about education. It's like sometimes you have to trust professionals, don't you? And it's not for councillors with their political hats on trying to appease and make everybody happy. It's for the highways professionals and the Environment Agency professionals to work out when the road's got to be closed. And like you say,
I get frustrated on social media sometimes in Whittlesey, and I make a comment about how impressed I am by the fact that there's so many highways engineers in Whittlesey.
So I was going to do Whittlesey Parkrun tomorrow, but it's too wet, and so I probably can't get in there. And I might have to wait until you recover from your marathon training. Get out on a Saturday morning. Get up early on a Friday and a Saturday.
Sorry, this is not a thing for this podcast, but I can't do this weekend because obviously I'm doing 20 today. And I can't do the next weekend, but the weekend after I've got to do a 3. So
all right,
I've got
put it in the diary.
2 weekends time.
All right, let's do that.
Back to the flooding, I was wondering if you thought there would be a more efficient way to organize this, because I think one of the issues around, thinking about public information is there's no one single agency who's responsible over everything, right? Because you have so many different stakeholders and agencies. And often when people see, well, the county council is the lead flood authority, people think, like, and sometimes rarely, okay, like the county council is responsible for everything. Why is this stuff not done? Like, surely they should like be able to sort it out. So maybe like, the information around like what does being a lead flood authority mean in practice, and is there a better way? Stephen mentioned the lack of or limited funding of the Environment Agency. Do we think that actually more funding will solve this, or do we have to
Yeah,
take a different approach to how we manage
right.
flooding across the county?
For the Environment Agency, it certainly would. But let's just talk before that. Let's talk about what the county council has been doing. So
Yeah.
when I was, I keep talking about this and it's boring, but when I got elected at county council off the back of my friend Tim Wiley working out that the drains in St Neots hadn't been cleaned for 5 years, and then in August 2020 we had a summer flash flood and the whole of the high street flooded. Yeah, and we managed to change that, and through political pressure, through getting elected. Yeah, and now I get a cyclic gully cleaning report, and the drains in St Neots are cleaned twice a year. Yeah, and that's really helped in terms of the fact that the level of flooding that we've had previously would have been inside people's houses, and there's been very limited experiences that happen in this time round. The other thing the county council is in charge of is it's not just the river that floods, or it's all of the brooks that are attached to the river, and all those brooks have got something called riparian owners, who are the people who are legally responsible for their upkeep, and keeping them clean of debris. And we've put lots of money and lots of effort into contacting riparian owners, sometimes giving them grants to clear up the brooks, because what happens is, like, when the river gets overwhelmed, it gets high, they can't discharge properly, and the blockages means that they flood, and you end up getting flooding away from the river. And so county council has worked really hard on that. County council has also worked hard. There's lots of volunteer organisations called flood action groups. There's one in St Ives, one in Alconbury, one in St Neots, and in lots of the villages. And those are just volunteers, but they're really valuable as well, because they're the feet on the ground and they know their local flood environment. And so when you've got flooding going, they're the people communicating back to the district council and the county council, and doing stuff like, helping people with sandbags. And often, I got a call on Friday night saying, this road is flooded, can you phone the council? I phoned the council, and the roads closed like 20 minutes later. And so that's really so that kind of organizing, making sure that it's a year-round effort to make sure that we're resilient towards flooding, is something that the county council does, and I think do a really great job of. Yeah, the bigger problem is, like St Ives is a good example. So there was a meeting earlier this year between the Environment Agency and St Ives residents. There's two sluices, one upstream of St Ives and one downstream, called St Ives Sluice and Brownshill Sluice, both of which have been broken for about 3 or 4 years, and the EA don't have funds to fix them. They admit that there's a problem there, although they deny the problems as quite as severe as the residents do, and so they don't have the money to fix this flood infrastructure. And it comes down to, they have to make a business case, and their calculations and their simulations show that fixing these things wouldn't save that many houses, and it comes into a really cynical decision, and that's part of the problem, I think. And on the communication thing, so the over communication thing, when I was a kid, my grandparents lived in London before the Thames Barrier was built, and I can remember the sirens going off. Yeah, I think they never went off properly, because there was always the fear that London was going to get flooded with that Thames Barrier. And so they used to have sirens in the streets. And I think sometimes when some of these emails go out, warning people of flooding, is we'd be less likely to do that if it was a siren, because it would cause civil panic. Do you know what I mean? So it's sometimes a bit easy to fire out emails. And I guess the general point about comms is, it's like, we're all very social media native. And so it's easy to put stuff all over social media. And I'm always feeding stuff to the groups I'm on in St Neots, but not everybody's on social media. And we say check the website, right? Not everybody's checking the website. And it's like, how else do we communicate with people? They get text messages. There's going to be a new system through that, like, where at the moment you have to sign up for flood alerts, and it's on a very kind of wide area, but they're going to be a new system out where they're going to force out messages to everybody's mobile phone. You can't subscribe until you get warnings direct to your mobile phone. I've been in America where it's happened, where a kid has been lost at Disney World or something, and you get a warning on your phone. And in Hawaii, I think in the 90s, they accidentally put out a message saying there's a nuclear attack on Hawaii. It was a test message, and the whole of Hawaii went crazy. But so you're going to get these kind of Fed things.
Funnily enough, there was an article about. I don't want to stray into this particular political topic, but there was an article in that I saw about Israel that they've just implemented something very, very similar through emergency text messages, and the timing is sort of a coincidence. But anyway, let's move back off that. But just
it's the same technology, and the difference is you have to sign up for floodlights, and they're very general for a postcode. So if the River Great Ouse is flooding, it's not really going to flood my house because I live quite a long way from it. But with the cell phone technology, the cells are much smaller, and so you can basically ping it, an individual cell phone cell, which are relatively small, and so you can pinpoint people's locations. So in terms of comms, I don't know.
Is one of them going to go off every time I go out for a drink? Then,
well, possibly. And yeah, ours went off. The phone line ringing thing went off at like 3 o'clock in the morning. And you're like, "What? Who's dead? What's that?" And you just, but then you go back to sleep again. So it's difficult. It's difficult getting that balance right, and it's difficult knowing what other methods we could do.
My advice to a resident.
Gone.
Yeah, my advice to a resident would be find a source you trust and rely on one. But find the one you trust, because I know, we've got one of our local councillors, Dee Laws. She's absolutely spot on with everything she does in and around flooding and that around Whittlesea. And I know a lot of people just absolutely rely on her. So, that, and I understand why. So to me, that's the main thing. There are so many sources of information. You've got to find the one that works for you, and you've got to and rely on it.
Yeah, and that counts, because I do that role locally as well. It's like I'm always the person who's broadcasting to groups, talking about flooding. But it's in some areas, like for example in St Ives, where we don't have the most active group of county councillors currently, one of whom doesn't really participate at all, and that's an easy thing to break. If you've got a great county council, district council who wants to communicate that stuff, then it's fine. But if you've got an absent, especially in a 4-year term, when you get to 3.5 years, some people just start checking out a bit. And if you haven't got a good county councillor, then you're not going to get that information. So yeah, like you say, I think it's something we need to have a think about. But I'm not aware of a more robust way of communicating with people at the moment.
Yeah, it's a really difficult one, because I've seen, and I'm not going to name names, but complaints being like, well, like I spoke to some people in X, town or village, and I was the first person that I spoke to them, and it's just not possible to speak, especially in person, to every single person. However, that's why we have the system of local government, of town, district, and county councillors. So I haven't necessarily heard too much from the county councillors from those areas affected as much as perhaps MPs. And it's great to have MPs involved, but at the same time, I think it's our responsibility as people on county and district as well to feedback the information that we have from our authorities to the local groups. But even so, I know I can't reach every single person in person in an area of, let's say, 8,000 people, unless I spend every single day door knocking, which can happen. But yeah, it's interesting, this question. I want to know more.
The point for me about finding your trusted source, it doesn't have to be your councillor. It could be the Environment Agency. It could be the District Council. It could be the County Council. But just work out what works for you and rely on them as a source. Where is the information coming from that you can rely on and think, yeah, they're going to tell me that. They're going to tell me it in a timely fashion, and they're going to get it right. And use that as your trusted source, because as you say, not everybody's using social media. Some people will want text message updates, or some people will want whatever, and that's one of the benefits of having sort of multiple channels of communication, is you can work for something that works for everybody. It's more expensive to do, but from that perspective, it's right. And it could be your local councillor, because some of our councillors, as I said, they're absolutely spot on with this stuff, and they're great at communicating.
Yep, and local flood action groups as well, who are often the experts on local flooding and know more about what's happening than anybody else. Okay, moving on then. So Conservative Party conference was last week, wasn't it?
It was.
It was. Any rumours you've heard from that, Martin? Any gossip?
I've not.
You didn't go, but I know. But
no, I didn't go. But they wouldn't let me go at the moment. I just thought I watched it. I watched the 4 speeches, and you know, the supposed front runner at the moment is, well, the two supposed front runners are Kemi Badenoch and Robert Jenrick, and Kemi Badenoch doesn't like maternity pay, and Robert Jenrick is claiming to be the change candidate who wants to leave the EHCR, he wants to stop the boats, and just basically carry on with the same policies that the Conservative Party had before. And I'm just utterly not convinced. I think Tom Tugendhat's a top bloke, but he isn't going to win it. I think he needs more experience, and I hope James Cleverly pulls through it, to be honest. But he might get through the next round because the Conservatives desperately need a One Nationist through into the next round. But
do we think? Go on, sorry, go on.
From my perspective, I've always said this: this is the leader before the next. Is where the Conservative Party are, and the danger is they are going to make, if they go with Jenrick, they're going to make so little change from the past that the next election they're going to go backwards.
Do we think that maternity pay is too much at the moment, and it costs the taxpayer too much?
No, I don't. I think there's all sorts of issues about what we do to support parents that I think are huge. If we want people contributing to the economy, and if we want people to have children, then we've got, as a state, we've got to find ways of supporting it. And you know, as a country, you know, that's including the cost of childcare. We've got to revisit and rethink it. But there is a danger that we are piling cost after cost on the state, and that's not healthy either.
No, but it's two sides. Sorry, Alex. Two sides of the same coin, though, isn't it? If we don't want immigrants, if we don't want to legal immigrants coming here, well, we've got a demographic crisis. Is we're not having enough babies, and we need more people working to pay for Martin and I's old age pension, which is getting closer and closer. Don't worry about you, Alex.
Closer than yours.
I guess Alex is one of those immigrants who's going to be paying for our pension, so we're all in favour of that. Sorry, Alex.
Yeah, it's an interesting debate, this one, because again, I don't think, I mean, unless you've been recently through it or have, friends who are I don't think a lot of people are aware what the statutory maternity pay actually is. So basically you get 90% of your average earnings weekly for 6 weeks, so 6 weeks after, and then you have £184 or 90% of the weekly earnings, whichever is lower. So the 184 for the next 33 weeks. So actually, in my view, it's actually not a lot, and is not necessarily encouraging, especially if you are on a higher income, for you to, it's not an incentive as it's portrayed to be for most people. If you think about it, it's 184 a week after the 6 weeks for the statutory maternity pay, not to mention that so many jobs now, because of how the economy has been shaped over the last few years, with more, part-time jobs, more temporary contracts, more 0-hour contracts, and so on, more self-employed people like myself who don't even get any of those in the same form that you did in the past. So I think there's so many other ways where, if we actually want to encourage young families and parents, we can do that, which is not cutting this 184.
I mean, it is worth saying, as a self-employed man, I can't afford to get pregnant. But no, there's a reality about it, which is the conflict between the different messages that we're putting out. And I'd say, at a national level, there's loads of them, from within the Conservative Party. This thing about not wanting immigration, but at the same time cutting your foreign aid budget is a great example. There's a question about getting your foreign aid budget right, but there's a reality, which is proper investment in foreign aid and foreign support should reduce immigration. There's an utter conflict, and the Conservative Party have got to learn, and they've got to find ways of getting over those two things, because they're trying to appeal to two different sets of people with those messages, and they can't do it, and they will die if they don't work it out.
Yeah, well, talking of Conservatives appealing to people and local people, we have a mayoral election coming up next May. That's coming around quite quickly, isn't it? It does really come quickly, same time as county council elections. And so the process for selecting a Conservative candidate to challenge what I presume is going to be Nick Johnson standing again. I mean, every conversation I've had with him suggests he's going to stand again. Has started as well, and so I think the nominations are in. And as I understand it, there are 4 nominations in, which will be reduced down to 3 by a selection committee, and those 3 will be chosen by the local party. And the interesting bit of news that I don't think we had understood or anticipated, there's been lots of prediction of who those candidates are going to be. But in order to qualify to be a mayoral candidate, you need to be on the an approved MP candidate. So I don't know how that process works, Martin. But you have to be not anybody. So the people who have applied have been through that kind of not MP selection process, but have got they're approved as candidates for selection as MPs, which I think might eliminate some of the. Does that make any sense to you? Or am I talking?
Yeah, well, that would. I don't know if it's approved as because the parliamentary approval process.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's
party is. I mean, that's a national selection process. So it would surprise me if that was the way it had to be, because actually, as a member of in the Conservative Party, to stand as a member of Parliament in Cambridgeshire, you can stand as a local candidate as well. Stand for selection as an MP as a local candidate without being on the national list. So I sort of don't understand that. But locally, there is an approved candidate process, which to stand as a councillor, you have to go through an approvals process. And I suspect that's the sort of thing we're talking about.
So as I understand it, there are four candidates. Yeah, one of them, unfortunately, I think is not Anthony Brown, who has declared he's not going to run as mayor, because actually he would have been actually, I think, quite a credible candidate with lots of experience. And
I agree.
Despite my previous reservations about him, having spent quite a lot of time with him in the election campaign, I'm much more in favour of him as a decent one nation conservative, a bit like Martin, basically.
But it's interesting because I remember when Steve was first selected, and they went through this thing of whittling the candidates down, I think, to 4 rather than 3, before they did a hustings to select the final one. And Heidi Allen put a name forward, and I supported Heidi actually. And Heidi was a very, very decent person, and that she was stitched up and filtered out early on. And everybody tells me she wasn't stitched up, but I saw those 4 candidates the candidates in front of us at the hustings and watched the hustings, and there's no way Heidi Allen wasn't streets ahead of them. Is the reality. And actually Cambridge lost out from a damn good mayor for that. But Heidi was persona non grata at the Conservative Party because she was making a fuss about rollout of IT packages and of universal credit. And she was making all the right noises about it, but making people uncomfortable. And from that perspective, Anthony Brown's from the same wing of the party, and it'd have been great to see him. But my understanding is he's not one of the candidates.
So lots of the predictions that we've made previously are people like the district council leaders, and city council leaders. So the names that have been thrown around are Wayne Fitzgerald. This did previously by us: Wayne Fitzgerald, Anna Bailey, Steve Count, kind of maybe even Chris Bowden. I don't know, kind of the big conservative voices in local politics. But as the rumours I've heard, I think they're quite strong rumours as well, is that 2 of the 4 candidates, one is Paul Bristow. Yeah. Now,
Paul, sounds surprising.
Yeah, but Paul, I think Paul's social media, and this is people in glass houses throwing stones, but Paul's social media profile is a bit silly sometimes. But you have to say, he fought one hell of a campaign, didn't he, in the general election, and completely, he lost by a hair's breadth, when he should have lost by quite a lot, I think, considering all that's happened in Peterborough. So as a campaigner, Paul's obviously a really great bloke, The other one is another parliamentary candidate, and I think Alex spotted this when he changed his Twitter account from Chris for South Cams. Is Chris Carter Chapman? Is it Chris Carter Chapman, the South Cams parliamentary candidate who was unsuccessful as well? So I think those are 2 of the names we have. I don't think that any of the district council people, leaders like Anna, are on the list, but I don't know for sure. So I wonder if we want to try and guess who the other 2 are, Martin.
We're not even sure those two are on the list. I'm pretty sure.
No,
Sure.
I'm sure Paul Bristow and Chris Carter-Chapman. I'm fairly certain
Okay.
that they're on the list.
Yeah,
See,
I'm quite sure Paul Bristow is, because it was obvious after, the general election that, like a lot of people after they lose the seat, they kind of stop, take a break, maybe like go on a holiday, relax a bit. But like it was clear, like he kind of continued, campaigning, and is very much, active still,
my
so.
concern, I mean, my concern, and what they can, if they were to listen to anybody, and if they were to listen to me, the message I would send to them is, yes, you've got to pick a Conservative, but you've got to pick a Conservative that can work with other people.
Yeah.
And that should be your absolute priority with who you pick. And there is I personally have a lot of time for both Ian and Wayne, but actually their public persona is not always the most cooperative in the world when it comes to other political parties. I think that's
No.
That has got to change, because we cannot afford to go backwards.
No.
We've got a combined authority that is starting to deliver things at the moment that has had I want to say special measures. It's not special measures. I've forgotten the word for it, but
Best value notice.
the best value notice lifted. You can start to see things happening. You can start to see people having debates now, not about why you shouldn't cut bus services, but about where bus services need to go, and how people, and how bus routes can grow around the county. And that's exciting. We don't have that sort of debate often enough in politics, at a local level, because of the way funding is. And they need a Conservative that can sit there and pull together this thing about being Conservative as a mayor, but at the same time working with the other council leaders. And because there is a real chance, especially depends on where Reform are, but there's a real chance that the Conservative is going to win it under a first past the post system. And I object to the fact that it's first past the post, by the way. I think it's wrong.
I agree. It's very likely to be a Conservative, which means we need somebody absolutely credible, don't we? What we need is an Andy Street kind of person who is gonna. I mean, poor Andy Street was a great mayor for West Midlands and lost his. That's politics. He lost his mayorship, didn't he? But that's what we need. We need somebody like that.
He just got a new job as chairman of the Birmingham Rep. But there you go.
There you go.
Yeah, I wonder if such candidates exist locally, because I do agree that's kind of like, especially if you consider the different types of political leadership within the different districts. Yeah, as a mayor, it's really important to have that quality, like Martin says, to be able to work, for example, in a civil way with, a Labour leader, with a Lib Dem council leader, with various political, and with, including other, maybe perhaps conservative leaders who are from a different wing of the party, as you are in other district councils. So yeah, I mean, I'm struggling to see like who would be the obvious candidate, because I don't think there's anyone quite similar to Andy Street's style here locally that I've seen involved in this. But saying that, because it's quite, as you both said, like quite a high likelihood the Tories would win this, there's also like an opportunity for, like, they often do with parliamentary, to have very good candidates from outside coming in. Perhaps some of the members of parliament who lost their seats from another part of the country. I mean, that is also possible, to have good external candidates coming in.
I mean, there's one that would be interesting, because she's an ex-South Cambridgeshire councillor, she's an ex-MEP, and she's an ex-member of Parliament, and that's Vicky Ford. Because historically she's from South Cambridgeshire, and Vicky would actually be great as well. As she halfway through. Actually, early in her term as MP for Chelmsford, the council got taken over by the Lib Dems in quite a huge swing, and Vicky has been very, very good at challenging the council, but not doing it in an aggressive way. And she lost the seat basically because of, and she was a minister as well. So. The Vicky's an option, actually. I hadn't thought about that, but Vicky Ford, if she brings a name forward, I think she would be strong. and she could work with others as well. I'd like to think Vicky's on that list now. I've thought about that.
There is another former leader of the county council who's quite a reasonable chap. You're gonna join the party and throw your hat in, Martin. Is that a job you would want to do?
A, it's too late. B, no. There's part of me would love to do the mayor's role, I have to say, just because that strategic stuff that the county council did was the thing I probably enjoyed the most. But no, I couldn't stand as a Conservative because I've got a conscience. I just couldn't. And B, I'm enjoying what I'm doing at the moment. It's the reality. But I think another time, another place, I'd have thought about it. But I could not stand as a Conservative at the moment. That's why I stood as an independent last year. And no, I won't stand as an independent for mayor.
I was going to ask Stephen if he considers a second run as an independent candidate for a non-super local election.
I think it's a great job. I think it's a much better job than being an MP. You see, with much more real influence in the region of being MP. It's like a super MP almost, isn't it? And it's something that I would, if it was a job you could play, I'd love to do that job. I'm not qualified at all. Yeah, but the cost of campaigning for it are ridiculous. It cost me like nearly 10 grand to run as MP. It would cost of order hundreds of thousands to put a credible campaign together as mayor, and like that's outside.
And to be honest, the results would be the same. It would be my guess.
I'd get my ass kicked. Yeah.
Well, being blunt, mate. Yeah. There's been a couple of independents who've stood before. There was certainly one last time around who thought he had a chance of winning and didn't. I've forgotten his name, but the trouble is with elections like that, people go and focus on the major parties. That's a reality.
Okay. Yeah.
And an independent, it would have to be somebody really outstanding that's really going to catch the eye, that's got a huge public profile.
Across the whole county. Yeah.
Say again?
Across the whole county and not just in some little.
Well, I think we'd have to have somebody with a national profile actually to an independent in Cambridgeshire. And that for me, I can't think who that would be. I can think of a few people, but I don't think they are. I mean, there's obviously people in and around the Cambridge economy that, can make a noise, but I suspect they've got better things to do. Yeah.
And the reality is that actually it's a good time to be mayor, isn't it, as well? Because I think this government seems to be really invested in their metro mayors. Nick Johnson certainly getting a lot more profile and getting some nice seats and visiting Downing Street, and the sounds are all right, aren't they, about investing? Because I think we'd all agree that it should be, if it works, a really good layer of local government, and with much more strategic thinking.
Especially with a place like Cambridgeshire, and we mustn't forget Peterborough in this actually, because Peterborough's a growing and ambitious city as well. But Cambridgeshire, by the nature of having that Cambridge part of its brand, is really, really powerful, not just nationally but internationally, and that should make the role exciting as well.
Yeah. So talking about local politics as well, we have another by-election coming up in South Cambs. What do we know about the runners and riders? Who's the Labour candidate in South Cambs for Pippa Haling's seat?
Do you mean is it the Histon?
Oh, is it Histon? Is that what it is?
Yeah. The Histon by-election. I'm going to try to find out the whole list now. I have to say I haven't been door knocking there yet, so
feels like that feels like a nailed on Lib Dem victory, doesn't it? That's absolutely in their heartland.
You say that Histon and Impington used to be it was a Conservative county council seat at one point, because a guy called Matt Bradney had it for a little while, who was on the cabinet with me when Jill Tuck was leader, and a very, very decent, nice guy, Matt, as well. So it depends on. I don't think national politics has swung enough to put it into the Conservative ballpark, but you would have thought it's a nailed on Lib Dem seat. But it has been Conservative in the past.
Yeah, and the Conservatives would be seen as the most serious challengers to it, I think.
Yeah, I'm just trying. Has it been published already? I would just want to see like the full list of candidates. Is it Histon and Impington?
I don't know. I can Google it. So I know one candidate. The Green candidate is Catherine Fisher, who was the Green candidate who stood in St Neots alongside me.
Oh yeah, I found the whole list. So there are 5 candidates. Yeah, I just want to read the whole list so we're being fair. So I'm not only promoting one or another on this cross-party podcast. So yes, Catherine Fisher from the Green Party. So we have Will Mason from the Labour Party. There's Clive Belbro Power from the Conservative Party. I haven't heard of him before. Maybe someone who's involved locally. We're far from that area, all of us. Then there's James Rickson from the Lib Dems. Again, I'm not sure I heard his name in local politics. And Ed Stoneham, independent. Yeah, I haven't. I mean, obviously, I know Will from the party, but I don't think any, apart from Catherine Fisher, who stood obviously for the general. I'm not sure if any stood for or were councillors before. So could be quite an interesting one with what seems to be like some at least new candidates.
Yeah, so Catherine hasn't been the Green Party candidate hasn't been a councillor before,
Yeah.
but she's a fantastic talker. She ripped up some of the hustings with her speeches were really, really good. Yeah, and I think between her and I on the voting, her and I split them, I think 50-50, but she was fantastic. She's a much better public speaker than me. And so I think she'll be a great candidate for them as well. I've noticed somebody sent me through Ed Stoneham, who's an independent, who I kind of know on Twitter, and I think I've talked to a bit on Twitter, but somebody sent me his website and like he's borrowed my pink and black branding as well, which I'm kind of flattered by as well, because I thought I've
copyrighted it. You should have trademark and copyrighted.
Under the pink and black. It's got a 0% victory rating so far, so hopefully he might make better of it than I did. But it's good to have that borrowed as a brand. So that's Pippa Haling's seat. It has been for a long time, I think, and she got elected to Parliament, and so I think she took quite a long time to stand down. I don't know why that was. Whether it's because there are a few MPs that still are councillors, so I can't imagine how you can do it properly.
I mean, there's some who have been councillors for like a good few years into their not here locally. I'm not aware of anyone, but I know in other parts of the country there are MPs and councillors who are councillors for more than a few months after. Yeah,
I think there are MPs that have served full terms as councillors. Some of them it's because they don't want to force by-elections and stuff like that. But also wearing those two hats. There's a reality, which is the information exchange and the sharing of information between between councils and MPs is really important. And what better way to make sure that it's right? It's reality. And when you think about MPs go on to be MPs and ministers, MPs and non-exec jobs and stuff like that, there is an argument to say there's no reason why there can't be an MP and a councillor.
When you were leader of the county council, did you have a good relationship with the local MPs? Did you know them? Or did you have regular conversations with them or not? Because that district council is one of those things that we're not struggling with, but it's obviously we've had a complete turnaround on all our MPs in Huntingdonshire. So we've got 3 of them, and they're all different than they were before.
For the most, yes, there were a couple. There was one in particular. I'm not going to name names. One in particular who never used to really meet, but the others, I used to meet on a regular basis and exchange information. To Steve Barclay's credit, I did quite a few things with Steve to try and push issues in Fenland, like Wisbech to Mayoral is an example where Steve sort of was very, very pushy on it, and stuff like that. Where we did with the city deal, we had to be and make sure that MPs understood. And I remember one of the first things I did, because there was a relationship breakdown between the Cambridge MP and my predecessor as leader. And the first things I did when I became leader was go down and see him and just say, look, here's how we need to work together. And have a good conversation. I just and he received it very well, and that was Julian Huppert, by the way. And it was that seemed to work as well. So I got on very well with them. but I tried to get on with leaders as well, and a lot of them are different political colours. So
yeah, and that's the whole challenge we're talking about the mayorship, isn't it? Is that's what we need to do. Is we need to talk and get on. So I think Nick has done a fantastic job actually in turning around what was a fundamentally broken combined authority into something which is starting to function now, like you say.
Yeah, I think that's right. It's worth saying that although there were issues, it's worth saying that James did deliver in some areas as well, and there were things that James did as well and achieved, and he will focus on them. But I do think there were issues, and I think they have largely been resolved. Some of that has been resolved because of a political swing across the county. Away from the Conservatives is a reality, and there is an issue about what happens if and when. I think it's if nationally the swing goes back towards the Conservatives and we see councils changing control again. I think is a real danger for Cambridgeshire. There's an even bigger danger actually, which is that the Conservatives don't make inroads. And don't start to get that swing and reform do. And then it becomes even worse to a certain extent. Well, to a very large extent.
It's interesting times, especially since I'm the bounce back I don't know about, but it's interesting seeing Labour after such a short amount of time in power and the negativity, and maybe that's just on social media echo chambers, but there's so much negativity towards Keir Starmer and people that it's like like we said last week, they haven't had any honeymoon period at all. There's none, zero. They're straight into it, and they're in lots of ways amongst lots of people they're unpopular as the previous administration were, which is a bit silly actually. I think.
But they can afford to be unpopular now.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the reality. First of all, it sort of doesn't surprise me because people didn't elect Keir. They chose not to re-elect the Conservatives. Is a reality. But they can afford to be unpopular now because they need to do unpopular things. I mean, I don't mean unpopular things like take freebies. I mean unpopular things like the winter fuel allowance, which we all have concerns about, but there's a reality that when people vote in 2 or 3 years' time, apart from a few people, the majority of whom are voting Conservative anyway, they're not going to remember it. The thing they'll remember is the impact of Rachel Reeves's budget in 3 years' time or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So they can afford to be unpopular now.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think also like a lot of the Labour's like key areas they're focusing on take time to actually see any results. So we discussed previously about the need to have some quick wins as well. But all the stuff that's going on in Parliament in terms of GB energy or workers' rights or renters' rights or all this stuff will take more than a few months for people to say actually something's changed in my workplace or something's changed in my tenancy or we built more houses locally, so it won't happen overnight. And meanwhile, what you get is those kind of like more short-term decisions around whether it's, savings or like filling in the black hole or whatever it is, which will be felt negatively and will have a negative impact on, how favorable people are towards the government as a direct consequence of that. So, but it is interesting the conversation around social media. Especially around when it was the time of the Labour Party conference. If you notice, every single person who's posted anything about Labour Party conference, you get like hundreds, tens of comments, like negative comments. It's not the same. Like, sure, many people are not happy with the government on the doorstep, as you'd expect, especially in the context of what is happening with some of the stuff in the media right now, but it's not the same level as you'd get on, let's say, Twitter, if you look under any Labour post or Conservative post for that matter, because so many Conservative MPs as well, those still remaining, you look under their posts and there's like a barrage of abuse and like negative comments. And I'm sure they don't get the same ratio of negativity when they're out campaigning. It's not reflective of reality.
This is part of my issue about where the Conservative Party is, because if they had a leader with a real big social conscience, and a really good understanding of what One Nationism could do for aspiration, for delivery of an economic agenda, as just as an example. And how that would come across, but also a real insight and understanding about those that need the support in our society, whether that's support to improve their lot at work or whatever. Somebody that could really put and focus on that would make real inroads, I think, as a Conservative leader. My fear is that they're not. They're going to go for a leader that's that leads a Conservative Party that's talking to itself again.
Right, so we are 55 minutes in. I need to get ready soon because I've got to go to a little council meeting this morning.
Very exciting.
I think we have 21 public speakers. This is for the Mill Road closure discussion, the final decision, hopefully the final decision as well. So and I've never been, there's been few things I've been contacted more, but I've only put my name down as a sub like in the last week, and I've had more letters through the post of people writing to me with some really, and do you know what, I've read those letters and there's been on both sides some real really coherent arguments on both sides that people have written to me and taken time to write, multi-page letters, and I've actually quite enjoyed reading those this week. So that's helped me quite a lot. But I'm going to go into the debate with an open mind as usual and see what happens. But I'm sure there's going to be lots of coverage of that in local politics. So it's an exciting big decision. I'm looking forward to meeting.
I think it's a no-brainer, but
so stop predetermining, Stephen.
I couldn't possibly comment.
I personally think it's a no-brainer, but what do I know? I just think Mill Road is a real special place, and no traffic will make it and keep it a special place.
We'll see how it goes today then, and we can comment on the next Coffee, Buses and Politics next Friday about the aftermath of the decision and how it was received by the public, whichever way it goes today. So good luck, Stephen, with the meeting. And it will probably be a very long meeting with public speakers. But it's actually good, I think, when we have public speakers, because so many committees or meetings don't have any. I think 21 is a bit like, it's quite a lot. But when you have like a few, like on some items, I actually do enjoy hearing directly from residents. I think it's important because, especially given that the council is in Alconbury now, like it's not the most accessible place for a lot of people. So I think now it's quite good to have those questions on Zoom as well, and people can participate. So have fun at the meeting.
Yeah, so I think I think Henry Batchelor is chairing the meeting today. I'm not sure how much experience he's got as a chair. It's pity it's not Sebastian. Yeah, I love it when Sebastian.
I agree. Sebastian's a great.
He's the best chair ever. Yeah, and but so it'll be interesting to see how that goes, because I think it can be, if it's quite a feisty atmosphere, it can be quite difficult to chair those meetings. I chaired the ones on the C2C busway and on the congestion charge with lots of people in the gallery, and actually those were the highlights of my time as chair of county council, because there was lots of tension, and it was exciting to have people in the public gallery. So I'm looking forward to a meeting in which people are interested, because mostly people aren't interested. Martin, have you got any comments? What were you going to say about South Cam's chatbot? Have you got a new chatbot, AI chatbot?
No, I just it's interesting. What do we find the names? And I just think that if it genuinely is artificial intelligence, it's going to glean its own personality. So I would like to start it off in the direction I want it to go by calling it Marvin.
Yes, I'm also. Alex probably doesn't know the reference, but I'm also a massive fan of Douglas Adams. So yeah, that's a good suggestion. Is it actually AI, or is it people in South Cam's contact centre typing away on the keyboard? I wonder.
I suspect it starts off as it's probably one of these AI systems like they have in a lot of these businesses have, and I hope it's better than those. But that's what I suspect. It provides an auto response based on keywords, and then once it's done that, if it can't decide, it pushes you to the contact centre.
I'll tell you what I did do this week with AI, and I shared it on the joint administration or the WhatsApp group for the committee that's going to be this afternoon. And basically, and everybody was silent, is that there is a new thing from Google called Notepad LM, whereas you can feed it a load of PDFs, and it makes an AI podcast about the document, and it can be as technical as you want. Yeah. So I've been putting in some hardcore engineering stuff, but I put all the Mill Road papers in, and it made me it's a 17-minute podcast. Yeah. And it is absolutely fantastic. You can't tell that it's AI, and it's really engaging, and it talks about both sides of the argument. And obviously I read all the papers because I always do, but as a kind of a 13-minute kind of summary of the whole thing, it's absolutely brilliant. So I might even share the link to that on here if I can find it.
Yes, share it. I'm looking forward to listening to more Mill Road content.
I have to say, I've been putting something together about One Nationism at the moment, about just doing an essay about One Nationism for various reasons, and one of the things I've done with it is pulled out a number of questions and just thrown them into ChatGPT. To form, not to write the essay for me, because that's not what I want, but what it does is pull together a lot of the facts and things like that I really want. So just as an example, one of the principles underneath One Nationism is a thing called noblesse oblige. Nobility obliges, which is about the responsibility that people have, people in positions of privilege have to those that are less privileged, basically. And so I asked for sort of examples of good examples of noblesse oblige, and the one it's pulled out, which is fantastic, was Bill Gates and the work he's done in Africa to eliminate smallpox. And you look at that, and there's a benefit there of pulling out information like that. Am I allowed to do something? There's a link in the private chat. Could somebody copy and paste that across the bottom?
Oh yeah, I'll do it. So this
is
for your marathon.
My marathon. So I'm running the Frankfurt Marathon on the 27th of October, 2 days after my 60th birthday. I know I don't look it. I know I look older, but if anybody would consider sponsoring me, I'd really appreciate it. Everything is on that page that we've got. If you can't post it, it's if you go to justgiving.com and search for Angela Curtis. And it's in support of a charity that's helped a young girl at Harry Smith, who is absolutely phenomenal.
And I know you've done all the training. So I think the thing that annoys me about people doing marathons sometimes, yeah, and Jade Goody was one of the people who did this, is they'll just turn up and they'll try and run a marathon without doing the training, and they'll hurt themselves. Actually, running the marathon in Frankfurt, yeah, is the least part. It's a victory lap, isn't it? For somebody who's done, like, you're going to go and do a 20-mile this morning, yeah. Once you've done a 20-mile run, yeah, that's where you earn your marathon medal, yeah. And so you won't enjoy it because these things are not enjoyable, Martin. You know it's not going to be enjoyable. Last 6 miles is not going to be enjoyable at all. But you've done all the training, and that's what impresses me. So I'll definitely be dipping my hands in my rather empty buckets at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely have tried to do the training. My legs are telling me I haven't, but I always make a point about half marathons is a comfortable stretch, and a marathon is an uncomfortable stretch. And I'm reminding myself of that. They really are hard work. Every one of my marathons, I've done a few, but every one of them has been well earned.
Yeah, I agree too. I've done 6 of them, and I'm not doing any more because my knees don't work. All right, with that, I think I need to go to my meeting. If the good thing about having AI podcasts is maybe very soon we won't have to get up at 7:30 on a Friday morning. 7:30, 7:20, 7:25 sometimes.
Or 7:28, depending on how much you delay your alarm.
Yeah. So that would be good if we could get AI people to talk about politics in Cambridgeshire. So thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you all next week. Bye.
I'll see you next week.
See ya.